Felix's POV.
I grumpily trudged down the hall and to my office. When I arrived, growls could be heard from the closed door. I took a deep breath and swung it open. Immediately, the two alphas sitting opposite my desk turned their heads to face me. Walking over to sit in my chair, I noticed two female omegas from my pack standing in the corner. I recognized the women as sisters Lisa and Lura, a pair of twins. I sat down and organized the papers on my desk before addressing the alphas. They noticeably got quiet and tucked their heads slightly, getting the message that I wasn't happy about dealing with their quarrel. After feeling satisfied that they'd calmed and I fixed my desk, I turned my attention to them.
All right, would you like to explain why I was woken up for this, Alpha Morris?
Morris crossed his arms and glared daggers at Alpha Robinson.
Hey, look at me, not him.
He jumped at my yell and nodded slowly. Well, this morning, I woke up to find him in bed with my wife's sister. I nodded, prompting him to continue. I then told him to leave my pack house, and he refused, so we fought. And then Lura called your beta, and we were brought here. I sighed, looking to the woman. Lisa blushed and seemed very embarrassed, while Lura looked rather upset. Alpha, if I may, Robinson started. Lisa is my mate. I do not intend on leaving her just because some asshole can't handle not being in control of her anymore. Morris growled. You're a bat!
Enough!
They both looked to the ground.
Lisa, do you accept Alpha Robinson as your mate, and all the responsibilities that brings?
She nodded shyly, and he gave her a little smile.
Then that settles it. You shall move in with him and become his Luna. End of story.
Maloris growled and kept his eyes on the floor.
Honestly, I don't have time to deal with you children. Now leave. I better not see you in my office again over this issue.
They both nodded and promptly left, leaving me alone, finally able to return to my little mate. The door shut loudly behind my back as I walked through the small apartment. I noticed the fire had died down, so I began the task of starting it again. Once it was dealt with, I stood to go make breakfast, but a whimper from the bedroom caught my attention instead. I opened the door to find my mate sitting on the edge of the bed, attempting to stand.
Hey, I don't want you putting pressure on your legs yet. They aren't healed.
He jumped, and his head snapped upwards to meet my gaze. It hurt my heart when I saw the fear in his eyes. I walked over and crouched in front of him, placing a hand on his knee.
You're not in trouble. It's okay.
He looked at me cautiously, still not making eye contact. I sighed and leaned forward, resting my body in between his knees. I wrapped my arms around his small midsection and placed my head against his chest.
Don't be afraid of me. I would never hurt you. You're very important to us.
He sniffled quietly. I smiled against his chest when I felt his small fingers carting through my hair. His left hand moved to my back and gently rested on my shoulder blade. His heartbeat was surprisingly slow and calm, seeing as just a second ago he looked to be on the brink of tears. The longer I stayed in this position, the more I never wanted to leave it. His touch was so comforting to me, I could probably fall asleep like this. My wolf seemed to agree as he snoozed in the back of my head. Everything about him is like a drug to us, luring us in and giving comfort unlike anything else. His scent makes me relax and unknowingly calm. His touch sends warmth underneath my skin that cascades down my body like a waterfall of bliss. And finally, his eyes. They're the embodiment of magic, glowing and glittering against the monotone background of my bedroom. He is perfect, imperfections and all, the only one who can truly calm the beast that resides inside me. I was brought out of my daydream when I felt him shiver. It was then I realized the fireplace in here had died down. I leaned back from him and smiled when I saw he was looking me in the eyes.
Do you need to use the bathroom?
He nodded sheepishly as I stood up. After getting him in the bathroom, I began fixing the fire. A light knock on the sink brought my attention back to him, so I stood and helped him back to the bed.
Are you hungry? I was about to go make some breakfast.
He paused for a second, glancing at the window behind me. When I turned, though, nothing was there.
Hey.
He snapped his head back to me, looking slightly nervous.
Is everything all right? Is there something you want to tell me?
I could see the tears building in his eyes before they slowly fell down his face. I had no idea what happened. Everything seemed fine this morning. Maybe he's just overwhelmed with being in a new place still. I was caught off guard when he abruptly leaned forward and wrapped his arms around my chest. He pushed his head into the crook of my neck and inhaled my scent, probably to try and calm himself. My heart was beating extremely fast, with my wolf pacing around in my head. He couldn't figure out what was wrong either.
Are you okay? Do your legs hurt?
After shaking his head, I was at a loss for what to do. Then I felt his cold, bated breath on my neck. Felix?
Yes.
I swear, my heart exploded when I heard the soft, quiet word. His voice was on the higher end and nearly a whisper. He leaned his head back against my neck, humming to himself, as if debating on whether or not to continue. Why do your touch feels good? Thankful for my enhanced hearing at this moment, as I was only able to just make out what he said, I took a deep breath, preparing myself to explain.
Well, have you ever heard of a mate?
He shook his head.
A mate is the person who will love you and be with you for the rest of your life.
When he didn't respond, I decided to just continue.
The moon goddess Selene picks every one of her children a mate so they can be happy and never have to be alone. Do you understand?
It took a second, but eventually he nodded.
Mates have what we call a bond. That bond pulls us together and helps them connect on a more spiritual level than most humans ever experience.
At this time, he leaned back, so I pulled him into my lap. He looked up at me slightly nervous. I decided to keep going.
The bond is a very mysterious thing. It connects people in many ways.
I reached down and grabbed his hand, pulling it to my lips and placing a soft kiss on his bruised knuckles.
Do you feel warm, fuzzy tingles when I touch your skin?
He nodded with a light blush on his cheeks. Bond?
Yes, that's our bond. You are my mate, and I'm yours for the rest of our lives. You mean everything to us.
My heart crippled when he smiled at me, looking up through his eyelashes. So adorable.
Do you accept me as your mate, little one?
He giggled softly at the nickname and nodded. Finally. Let's hope this day just keeps getting better.
Felix's POV.
We sat in the living room after breakfast. Well, more like I sat and he laid down with his head in my lap. I was gently running my fingers through his long hair when I got an idea.
Mate?
He opened his eyes, looking up at me with a curious smile.
I know I've asked this before, but I was hoping you'd tell me your name now.
He pursed his lips, looking a little nervous.
It's all right. You don't have to if you're not ready.
After closing his eyes and nodding slowly, I figured the topic had been dropped. So I settled back into comfortable silence, with my head leaning against the back of the couch. Names are of want? I opened my eyes and looked down at him, surprised that he continued with the question.
Well, yes. We use names to converse with each other and differentiate between people in conversations.
I watched him nod as he began to fidget with my tie.
Is it not uncommon for people to use names where you're from?
Instantly, he grew more timid and nervous. I felt bad for even bringing it up, but unfortunately, it can't be unsaid. I not remember I from. I pursed my lips, not wanting to make him uncomfortable, but at the same time curious.
You are of the demon race, right?
He nodded slowly.
Have you never been to your homeland?
No. Have only memories of the scary place and else. His broken English was slightly confusing, but I figured it probably isn't his first language, so for that, it's pretty good.
What is else? You don't remember your family? Or growing up?
I instantly regretted my question at the pained look in his sad eyes. Family, not find me, no. I could see the tears building in his eyes as he looked away. My wolf whimpered and whined at me for upsetting him.
Baby?
His eyes snapped back towards me, and I saw a blush dust his cheeks at the name of endearment.
How long were you at that scary place?
A few tears rolled down his cheeks, and my heart broke when he whimpered out the few words I didn't want to hear. From when was little. After the incident earlier, I didn't mention where he was from again. My wolf was angry with me for making him cry, and was currently sulking in the back of my head as I worked. My little mate was sitting in the office with me, looking out the window watching the snow fall. Finally, having gone through and organized the last of the documents for the day, I turned off the old computer and strode over to the window. Standing just behind my mate, I looked down and noticed he was watching a few of the pups rolling about and playing in the snow. It hurt my heart to think that he never got to do that, but then I got an idea.
Baby, would you like to go outside?
His eyes locked on mine for the first time, and he smiled happily. Yes. I chuckled at the questioning response and nodded, to which he made grabby hands at me, asking to be lifted from the love seat.
Okay, but first we're going down to the ground floor. I've had one of the pack elders make you some clothes to try on, so we'll do that now.
He nodded shyly, hurrying to hide his face in the crook of my neck. I just smiled and carried him through the pack house, hoping at least some of the clothes will fit. I sighed, upset that none of the clothes seemed to be small enough to fit him correctly. Apparently my little mate was much thinner than I had expected, as I've never seen his body without it being drowned in clothes. It was currently a guessing game what size would fit him, though now he had warmer clothes that fit a little better than what he was wearing. I still want to get it perfect so he can be comfortable. As we reached the front door, I did one more check over, making sure the beanie was snug on his head and his jacket buttoned up properly. Stepping into the flurry outside, making my way over to the frozen fountain, and sitting down with him in my lap. The snow falling into his hair made me feel really fuzzy inside for some reason. It could have been his smile or the pink on his cold cheeks, but I definitely felt my heartbeat quicken at how adorable he is. You looking funny. I chuckled at his observation. He quirked his head to the left, looking like a curious puppy with his little shy smile. I leaned forward and planted a kiss into his hair.
I'm just admiring how adorable you look sitting in my lap.
After a few minutes of us talking, mainly me talking, he jumped and turned around abruptly. I shifted him to the side so I could see what he was looking at.
Kyle? Armani? What are you two doing?
The pups ducked their heads slightly, a respectful greeting. Then Kyle shifted back. Will you play with us? I smiled and shook my head at the 6-year-old. The energetic puppy always wanted to play.
He can't stand, kiddo. His leg has an owie. Why don't you play with Armani?
He puffed his cheeks out, pouting. Because Monty don't want to throw sticks.
Well, where's your mama?
She's helping Aunt Maggie with food. I sighed, looking at Armani, sitting behind Kyle, with his ears flopped down. Then I felt a tug on my hand. I can do throw sticks. Both boys lifted their heads up, and Kyle smiled widely.
All right, you heard him, boys. Go get a stick.
Kyle promptly shifted back, and they both raced to find a good stick. Around 3 hours later, I decided he was getting too cold, so we said bye to the pups and went back up to the apartment to get him warmed up. I sat him on the couch, making sure to cuddle him up in a blanket and get the fire going before I went to make us some food. I had almost finished when I received a stressed mind link from Saya. Felix, there's demons at the front gate.
Shit.